All right, welcome to another episode of the Church Encourager podcast. We had Kingdom Alignment Part 10 this last weekend, and we talked about the heart. And we really did a summarization of where we were at over the last few weeks, but it was really important to get this message here because I'm looking at the notes you have for where we're going, and there's going to be a lot of good stuff there. But if we didn't see what the therefore was there for, we'd be kind of stuck. So anyway, here we are talking about Kingdom Alignment, Part 10. And the tradition in this podcast is that the pastor, the one of the two of us who gets to preach the sermon, gets to answer the questions during this. So, Dad, I will let you take over MC duties now and fire away with some questions.
All right, good. Thank you so much. Yeah. And it was a great weekend. You did a great job. And yeah, having the therefores in scripture is so important. And if you don't realize that therefore means you have to look backwards, you miss the point of what you're about to read. And it was the last several verses we've looked at were so important to get the next few ideas on the way out, because we have three more messages we're going to do. And it's really important. Mostly it's about once your heart's aligned, then it's about trust. And so then because your heart's aligned, now you can trust, which is how you live it out, which gets us ready for Matthew 7, which is really then how you work that out. Anyway, that's about where we're heading, but let's get back to where we were. And let's go with David prays in Psalm 86:11, give me an undivided heart. Why do you think he prays for an undivided heart rather than a stronger or smarter heart? And what does that tell us about what we actually need?
David, he's a very human example, right? He's had all these great moments where he's done the right thing, and then we see he's done the wrong thing. And he was very open about his struggles in the Psalms. The Psalms really give us a picture, the ones he wrote, of where his heart was at. And he was operating best. He was doing the right things when his heart was undivided. When he knew who God was, when he trusted in God, that's when he was operating. When he was in those modes where he wanted to call the shots, where he saw what he wanted and he took and shouldn't have taken, things ended poorly for him. And so, he knew that. And in these prayers, he knows it's being undivided to him. That's where life happens. And, so he knew that he was kind of a smart guy from what I can tell and can read. So, it all starts from there. He knows knowing the Father is where life is, but it just goes to show how any of us can fall off course from that, and how no matter what we do, no matter what giants we may end up slaying, it's all because of the Father. And we have to stay focused on him, or we can really cause significant irreparable damage in the lives around us.
So follow that up with another question. That was good. Because God promises in Ezekiel 36:26 and 27 to give us a new heart and put his spirit in us. How does knowing that a whole heart, an undivided heart, is something God gives us rather than something we manufacture on our own change the way we should approach our spiritual lives?
Yeah, God is generous. He's faithful to give. And we need to know that the greatest things that we can accomplish fail in comparison to what God can do. And what our human tendency is, for lack of a better term, is we want to be like, look at all the things that I have done. That's our natural go-to. It's, like, why do I need a savior? I'm a good person. We all, whether or not we say that, we think it, right? How on earth, am I really all that bad of a person? We have those thoughts, but so frequently it just comes down to that choice at the end. It's a choice. We have to make the choice to take from the tree of life. And you love talking about these trees, but it is throughout the Bible. That's the choice. Are we going to call the shots, or are we going to trust in God? And here's God saying that as you choose life, you get life. God gives it. It's like, here, this is what you have to do. It's choose me, follow me, and just see what happens. And it's always so much better than what we can do in our own power, in our own strength, on our own accord. But we have to choose him. And it's a constant choice because the fight is always there, and it's a lot more deceptive than we give it credit for. You know, we may not have a serpent talking at us in our ears, but boy, do we. You know what I mean? Right? We all have that, and we all have to make that choice. Sin is so easy to fall into, and it can be so hard to do the next right thing. But how much better is it when we choose life? And you know, getting from that mindset, how much we need God, that's where a soft heart happens. And just the good that we can see around us, the good in our families when our hearts are tender, the good in our communities, it all starts there. Um, you know, sometimes I wish I had a little more of a global impact, but then most of the time I'm just so thankful to be in a place like this where we get to do this stuff. And you know, God is so good, and he knows my limits. He knows I would get cranky if I had to make a lot of evening appointments and play concerts all over the world. And you know, I'm just so thankful I can do that here in the community, not necessarily concerts, but getting to play music and things like that, you know. But yeah, it changes everything knowing how good God is, and just appreciating what he's done and avoiding the traps that so often plague us of comparison and consumerism. And it's so easy to fall into those, just the you know, those traps of our hearts are at the tips of our fingers, consumerism and comparison. And if we're not careful, we can just, our whole mindset changes, and it just starts with choices. What am I going to do? How am I going to think? Where am I? What am I going to focus on? Who am I going to follow? So you know, this message really lands home. The heart will follow someone. It just will, and it will follow what it trusts, who it trusts, and it is far too easy to put our trust in something else. So the caution is that there is only one who gives life, and so follow him.
You know that you brought it up. I keep bringing it up. In fact, after we do Matthew 7, I'm going to do another pretty long series on the trees because it's and see, as you think about it, you start to go like, um, you know, maybe people have had the thought, well, if I was Adam and Eve, you know, you had God and walking, everything was yours. Why would you choose her? And yet we constantly do it. It's something about thinking that we know better, and it's so part of. That's why the other issue that you see running through the Bible is we can't do it without a new heart.
Mm-hmm.
We can't. We absolutely can't do it. And that many promises in the Bible are about God realizing and making a way for us to get new hearts so that we can choose to do the thing that, you know, where life is. But it's really a fascinating journey. You talked about Brady and Jessica, our friends who are missionaries in Northern Africa. And you talked about them searching for persons of peace, which is very cool. Uh, and you connected that the idea that if we can be people with undivided hearts, we can have an impact on people around us. And so, you know, what do you think about the importance of living? None of us do this perfectly, but particularly in community, you know, small communities like ours. We live in a very small community, like people know us here.
Yeah.
And how we live to the best of our abilities, people are watching that.
Yes.
And so and again, you know, none of us are doing this perfectly, but it's very important because you never know who's watching. Like, you know, you never know who's, you just had, you know, I won't go into it, but we were just chatting before the air that you had met with somebody who you didn't know, and they knew you because they watch you every week on the live stream. And so you don't know who's, and they live locally. You don't know who knows you. And if you had been different in person than you were up there, that would have been a pretty significant problem, right? Because they will.
Exactly.
So go
You know,
ahead. I just talked, but
just
you talk.
the I remember doing a Bible project class, and it was on the story of Jacob, and the point was our daily lives, the little decisions of our daily lives matter. How we treat people matters, and you know, the dangerous thing is it has eternal impact. You know, we were in Key West. I'm wearing a Keys Vineyard shirt, And I think, well, there's only so many people watching on YouTube or whatever. I'm really not that well known, but we go in the doctor's office and the doctor knows Kimberly and I. Like, oh my gosh, I watch you. And it was a really great appointment. It was Kimberly getting checked up and it just was wonderful. Like he was a fantastic doctor. And, then it was just the two of us. We decided, let's go into babies. I love a good baby's coffee. And, half the girls there go to our church now. Like, oh my goodness. And, they're inviting people who were there and they're just, oh my gosh, it's the pastor. And, there's just like, we can't go anywhere without being recognized. And, we're literally putting, the church name on our shirt, right? But as Christians, we're all kind of putting it on our sleeves. We're putting our heart on our sleeves, at least when we're living that way. And the importance of how we act, it should provide a little weight to our lives. It just should, in a good way. Like yes, we do have a responsibility to do the thing, to act like Christians, but again, if we don't have those soft hearts, we're more prone to acting wrongly. There's this viral video on the internet. It was a pastor. He was trying to live stream and somebody's recording him and he's, trying to do this church promo. And then a waitress gives him like a little free cup of water. He's like, what is this? A cup for ants? Get this away from me. And, he's like, okay, just cut that. And the guy recording it was like, it's live. And then he kind of panics and he's like, look how she made me sin. And like, buddy, that's not a tender heart. I think the only fix to that is to just apologize right there and be like, and that's how you act wrongly. That would have been the recovery method I would have done. But the real solution is to just have been kind to the way. Hey, thank you so much. Can I get a seltzer water or something?
The Adamic proclivity. Once again, it was the woman.
Yeah, look at what she made me do. She brought me a little tiny cup of water, and I have a big belly. I need a big cup of water. And we can rationalize that stuff so fast too, and things can always become someone else's fault. That's the Adamic proclivity, and that takes us back to the trees and where we're going with that. So, again, as we choose life, everything's better. And it helps the people around us when we're tenderhearted. And, how much better will our lives be when we all are tenderhearted and just treating people properly? And that's righteousness, is treating people rightly.
Yeah. You said something there that made me think. And you talked about wearing a t-shirt, right? So the people knew, but you said beyond that, I thought, we're encouraged, if you would, biblically, to not to take the Lord's name in vain, right? One of the commandments. And people often think that means you're not supposed to swear. I'm not necessarily supposed to do that anyway, but that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about if you're part of the family of God, you don't take that name lightly. You're bearing the name of the family of God, and don't do it in vain. Don't say you're this and then act like that. That's all of these things are related and always working back to the choices we make. And the whole idea of righteousness, it's got to be inside out, because it just can't be outside in, or if we think people are watching, that's the whole thing. He was like, we'll cut that out because people will be watching. And it's like, people are always watching. Don't act like that.
Especially when you broadcast it, buddy.
Yeah. And it's just not worth it. Right. And so, because if you only act a certain way because you think someone's watching, it's like what you talked about with guilt and shit. You're only doing it as a performance thing, not because you're being changed. And so desperately is God's heart for us to be changed from the inside out. So those aren't an issue. So that's just not there anymore. And as we close out in Matthew 6, it gets to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And I think once you've taken in as much time as we have in Matthew 6, his rule, his reign, and not a bunch of rules to follow with his righteousness, but actually being changed by Holy Spirit inside out, becoming different. That's when everything really begins to, that's when our hearts are aligned and things begin to change, because then how we live it out is going to be in Matthew 7. And then, so I'm looking forward to that. And I got something really cool for Advent coming. So I'm not jumping that, but I have planned out that next series too, which is going to be like the first half of next year, but it's all back to the trees. And I get so excited because now, after spending all this time for years, really building some foundation. We can go back now and go, oh, and my hope is that it has sort of an impact on folks forever. But anyway, I think you did a great job with your questions, and we probably chatted long enough for a day. So
Hey, we could go for another hour on this. We're both in pastor mode here, but that's probably good as well. My face hurts from smiling, if you will.
But you're not just doing that because of the camera, are you?
No. Again, I smile all the time, baby. That's that's it. So on that note, thank you all so much for being here with us for the Church Encourager podcast. We'll see you Thursday for our online Bible Institute Network podcast, and on the weekend, Kingdom Alignment Part 11. Dad, you're up. Therefore, do not worry about anything. Going to be really good. Excited for this next section. As we head towards Matthew 7, and then Advent, which is kind of hard to think is going to be upon us in the next few months, which will be in a couple minutes the way time is going right now. But anyway, that was enough of an ending preamble. God bless you. See you next week. Goodbye. Bye.